RPGs are well known for having really difficult trophy lists, certainly long ones, but some Final Fantasy games outright take the So let's talk about 5 of the hardest trophy lists there are out there for Final Fantasy games. Final Fantasy games range in difficulty from easy to difficult to outright being ridiculous, and I already have a video here on YouTube that gives a tier list for all of the Final Fantasy titles as somebody who has gotten most of the platinum trophies for Final Fantasies, but there was one game that I omitted from that list because it wasn't out at the time of release. And now it's out, and it deserves a place on that list. So today I'm wanting to take you guys through the 5 most difficult Final Fantasy trophy lists out there. So the first game that I'm going to talk about is going to be Final Fantasy X. Final Fantasy X is well known for the crazy hoops that it makes you jump through in order to get its platinum trophy. PSN Profiles here lists Final Fantasy X as having a 5 out of 10 difficulty at 110 hours. I think that while it's not the most challenging trophy guide out there, or trophy list out there, I do think that PSN Profiles undervalues how long it actually takes to get the trophy for Final Fantasy X, and it's largely because of a single trophy, which is Perfect Sphere Master. In order to complete the Perfect Sphere Master achievement, you have to max out the sphere grid for every character in the game. So this would ordinarily, in most Final Fantasies, just equate to just leveling a lot, but what this doesn't tell you is that you actually have to fill out all of the nodes that are empty in the sphere grid, as well as getting them all activated for each character. So the method here using Don Tonberry in the Monster Arena is very good. You can also utilize the various different monsters in the Monster Arena to pick up more spheres to be able to fill in those nodes, and it does take a really long time to get done. So while it's not difficult per se, it is tedious, but what is difficult is the fact that you have to get all of the celestial weapons as well, which involves lightning bolts, blitz ball, monster arena, fighting dark aeons if you haven't done it properly the first time around in the case of Tidus, or worse, the chocobo racing. This is of course not forgetting Nemesis and Penance as well. Penance you have to beat all of the dark aeons to be able to challenge, and then Nemesis you have to have captured 10 of every enemy for the monster arena. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but it really is, and it takes a great deal of time to have all of that farmed up, let alone being strong enough to actually beat the bosses. But I mean, you can use your Jimbo to get through the majority of it. It's not the bosses themselves that cause the issues for trophy farming, it's getting to them. Next on the list is the game that I did not mention in my previous list because it was only released this year, so I'm going to try not to talk about too much of the late game stuff for the purposes of not spoiling it as it was released this year. But it's Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and the sheer amount of things that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth asks you to do, some of which are actually extremely difficult, definitely warrants a place on this list. First of all, the mini-games. There are so many of them, and you have to ace every single one of them in order to get one of the achievements for the 7-star hotel, and it takes a long time. This is of course not forgetting the difficult and brutal challenges in the simulator that Chadley asks you to do that are insanely difficult in the later stages of the game, and that's not even remembering hard mode, where you have to play through the entire game on hard mode in order to get that trophy and unlock some of the more difficult brutal challenges in the first place. So there's a lot of task here when it comes to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and of course you have to go through all of the open world areas, get all of the radio tower stuff, all of the summon stuff, everything, and every node on every map, and that means going through Gungaga, and that's worth a platinum trophy by itself. PSN Profiles lists the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth trophy as an 8 out of 10 difficulty, 200 hour plat, and I think this is 100% deserved just because of the amount of hoops it gets you to go through. And there are so many minigames, so many challenging fights, so many things you can't miss while going through the game in the first place. Like, you need to assess enemies in order to get the unlocks for the challenges for you to be able to do them. It just asks a lot of you. So if you love Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, then absolutely go for the platinum. It is a very rewarding one, just be warned it's going to take you a while. The third game on my list is one of the few Final Fantasy Platinum trophies that I don't have, and the reason I don't have it is why it's on this list in the first place. Number 3 is of course Dissidia NT. Dissidia NT's trophy list, in and of itself, isn't actually that bad, but the nature of what the game is, combined with the fact that it's not the most played Final Fantasy game out there, makes it practically impossible to acquire. So we're back on PSN profiles here. It lists the trophy guide difficulty as 6 out of 10, 1 playthrough and 200 hours. I think you're probably going to need to spend a lot more time than that on this particular game. And again, that comes down to the fact that you kind of require other people, many of which don't play this game because it wasn't the most popular game at all ever, let alone now, for you to be able to get a lot of these trophies. So the main difficulty in the trophy list is receiving a grade of A++ in 3 ranked matches as each of the base game characters. So none of the DLC characters, but each of the base game characters. This isn't that bad in and of itself. Certainly if you have a group of 5 people, 3 versus 3, for you to be able to go through this trophy list with. But finding 6 people willing to play Dissidia NT at the same time is one of the most difficult challenges that you can find in a Platinum Trophy guide, because it's just not a very well liked game, which makes it difficult to find the people to play with. And then even beyond that, you have to get 100 ranked wins, 300 ranked wins, sorry, for Hardened Veteran. And this is one that I actually did do. I have played a lot of Dissidia NT when it came out, because I'm a big fan of the original games, and I really actually quite liked NT. But my problem is that I did all of those ranked matches as Vayne, who was a DLC character, and therefore didn't get me any of the trophies that I needed to get the Platinum. So if anybody does fancy a bit of time playing some Dissidia NT, let me know. Number 2 on my list is actually my favourite Final Fantasy of all time, but having got the Platinum for this game, I needed to not play it again for a while after doing so, and it's Final Fantasy IX. PSN Profiles lists this as a 7 out of 10 difficulty, 80-hour Platinum, with the caveat that even with the boosters in-game, that's what the difficulty is set as. And I would say if you want the Platinum, like easy mode, do the thing, and you're not bothered about playing the game because you maybe enjoyed it before and you just want the Platinum, absolutely do that. But it's still really difficult, even if you do that. And I think the number of things that this game asks you to do in order to get this trophy is ridiculous. And people who think Excalibur 2 is their biggest problem and their biggest barrier to getting this Platinum, think again. The number of things that are in this game that are missable is eye-watering, purely because the amount of time you would have to spend perfecting the first couple of times you play through Final Fantasy IX in order to get all of these unmissable trophies, you won't get them all in one go. There will be at least one that you miss. 100 different NPCs to play Tetramaster with. Having all of the ATEs, which I missed the first 2 times I played the game, and I had to go back and do it again. Excalibur 2. Getting S-rank Treasure Hunter is an absolute pain in the backside. And that's not even remembering the most notorious trophy in arguably all of Final Fantasy history. Hail to the King is one of the single most notorious trophies in PlayStation history, let alone Final Fantasy history. Having to do this ridiculous minigame and do it perfectly up to 1,000 jumps is a ridiculous task. It's absolutely insane. As a matter of fact, the only way that most people do this trophy is by cheating. Going back to PSN Profiles here, I'm not going to go into huge detail about how people cheat this particular trophy because there are videos out there that are much more detailed than mine would be, and this isn't a list about how to get the Hail to the King trophy. But basically people use remote play along with hotkeys that are downloaded from a script in order to make it so that the game essentially does it for you. For what it's worth, I actually did use remote play for a different trophy, which was the Defeat 10,000 Enemies trophy. What I did is I used the portion of the game where you have Marcus and Steiner in Alexandria, and you have enemies running up to you, and you essentially just leave it on a turbo button and leave it overnight, and that's how I got that trophy done. And I won't lie to you, I did also use this method when it came to Hail to the King, but when I'm trying to get the trophies for every Final Fantasy game, you think I'm going to spend 200 hours just trying to perfect that one thing that really isn't that big a deal in the grand scheme of things? For that one trophy? No. So if there's one trophy list that can beat all of the other games that I've listed on this list, they weren't in any particular order to be honest, but this one in particular almost had me quit trying to get all of the Platinum trophies. It was that bad, and it could only be one, and it's Final Fantasy XIV. And I'm talking specifically about the PS5 version of Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn. The things this game asks you to do to get its platinum trophy are quite frankly gargantuan and ridiculous. And because they take so long in order to do, I know this game is an MMO, but you could have made this at least a little less tedious, to the point where I very nearly quit trophy hunting altogether. Back to PSN profiles for one last time here. 6 out of 10 difficulty. Do you know what? Difficulty wise, I'd agree with this. It's actually not that hard to do the trophies when it comes to Final Fantasy XIV. 999 hours. I hate that I agree with this. I hate that I agree with this. And the reason is the amount of crafting, gathering, leveling, all of that stuff you have to do is absolutely ridiculous. If you've ever played Final Fantasy XIV and you've ever done collectible grinding or fate grinding in this game, you will understand how ridiculous these things are. So, 8,000 collectible gathered. That's ridiculous, but that's actually the least difficult one of the ones I'm going to talk about here. It's tedious. I got this done while I was streaming. Follow me on Twitch if you want to come and join me playing any of these games, by the way. But I was talking through it. It didn't take long. I was trying to do it just on one area, and then I just kept going round and round and round and just doing the collectibles there. Fine. Synthesizing 5,000 collectibles. All right, fair enough. That's also, well, it's boring. Is the problem? It's boring. You're sitting there, and because you can't automate this kind of thing. Not really, anyway. Like, you have to sit there and pay attention to the fact that you're literally sitting and crafting 5,000 collectibles all at once. And I know what you're thinking, like, oh, but I do crafting and gathering anyway, that would come naturally to me. I'm like, sure, maybe that's true, but that wouldn't then pair up with all of the other things that you need to do, such as completing 2,000 instant dungeons raids, or trials. Like, that's a lot by itself. 3,000 fates. 3,000 fates is absolutely insane. When I tell you that this on its own took me weeks, if not months, to do, and I did my fates while playing through the game. I did my shared fates for Shadowbringers and Endwalker. Maybe not like the whole way through that, but having done all of that, I didn't even hit 1,000 of them. So I had to do 2,000 fates just because. And they're not exciting for rewards or anything like that. Like, bicolor gemstones, which are the rewards you would get from doing this, can only take you so far. And otherwise you're just grinding for weeks, and it's horrendous. And just all of these things put together, to me, make 14 by far the nastiest platinum trophy Final Fantasy's ever had. I'm not even going to begin into going into the actual full 100% trophy list for Final Fantasy XIV, because you would have to be a true fanatic of this game. And I mean like the 0.01% of fanatics of FF14 to get that, because you'd need to do all of Eureka Orthros by yourself, Palace of the Dead, so that's the Necromancer trophy, which is really difficult, Savage raiding, all of the relic weapons. There's so many things you would have to do in order to get the full 100% trophies for Final Fantasy XIV, so thankfully the Platinum only covers Realm Reborn. So that is all of my picks for the top 5 most difficult Platinum trophies that Final Fantasy has to offer. I did want to give a quick honourable mention to this game right here, Final Fantasy X-2, because the main game itself, not the worst if you're following a guide, but you need to follow a guide to the letter. And you also have to suffer last mission, and that deserves an award in and of itself. But I'd want to hear from you. What trophies have you found the hardest to get hold of when it comes to Final Fantasy games? Let me know down below, and if you're not sure what to type out, then just type the word algorithm, because it helps me out as a content creator, and I'd love you a great deal for it. If you've enjoyed what you've seen here today, perhaps consider following the channel by clicking the subscribe button and giving the video a like if you want to see more videos like this about Final Fantasy and deep diving the really meaty parts of the gameplay, because that's where I thrive when it comes to Final Fantasy and other JRPGs. Stay tuned for other content on JRPG stuff as well, and if you want to come and follow me on Twitch or TikTok or Discord or any of those things, all of that is linked in the description box below. Thank you ever so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.